Righty. Good morning. I'm rushing. I'm watching that. I'm thankful they got that clock because otherwise I'd be running all over the place here. Well, I want to thank everybody. Wow, this is a great crowd for Sunday school. We want to share with you how all of this began and how all of these this craziness started to take place in our lives. We were actually pastoring a church in north of Cincinnati. For those of you who have not seen us before, imagine that, going from a church in Cincinnati to this overnight. And that's really what happened with what the Lord had in store for us. But again, I'll share this with you, and some of you know the story. This all began on a journey, on a vacation with my family and I, as we were going down to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Some of you have been there before or know where that's at. We went down there and was involved in a vacation, which is something we don't get a lot of especially back then, and now I've not seen a vacation. What is that anymore? Is it changed in definition? But we were on a family vacation down there, and we went to bed one night, and I come flying up in the bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, and to a pastor, everybody thinks that's, hey, it's a message God's thrown at you and said, here's what you're going to do a message on. Well, the only thing on my mind was the Ark of the Covenant. That was it. And as a pastor, it's like, got this one. You think you know the whole story, and my wife, just being the wonderful, wonderful wife she is, she slaps me and says, lay back down and go to bed. We're on vacation. So I laid back down. We went to sleep. We got back up, went to Dollywood Amusement Park, got out of there by noon, got back and went out for the day for shopping. So we go to a place called Pigeon Forge, and there's a place there called the Old Mill. You know where that's at? You ever been to the Old Mill? We were at the Old Mill, and there was a shopping group of little shops around this little area here. And what happened is there was a well-known artist, Spencer Williams. He's in his window of his shop, and he's sitting there and he's painting. Now, the reason this guy was really well known because he also played the Roman Guard in the Passion play that used to be there in the Smoky Mountains. So I go in, and he's painting the landscape of the mountains, and I'm talking to him about how beautiful his work is, and a woman taps me on the shoulder. She comes up and says, I have what you came in here for. And I said, I didn't come in here for nothing. You're trying to sell me something. So she takes me off to the side, to the back of the gallery, and here's what she shows me. This huge painting Spencer had done years earlier. It has the Lion of Judah sprawled out, the face of Jesus faintly over here on this side, and the main centerpiece was the Ark of the Covenant. And I said, I am not interested in this. And I ran out the door, went to the shop next door, told Sherry, get in the car, we're out of here. So we drove back to Gatlinburg, went up in the mountains. It's called the 321 area. It's called the Craftsman area. So we went up in the mountains to the Craftsman region, and we stopped at these group of shops alongside this cliff. And the cliff, there's one particular shop was a jewelry shop. Sherry went to the Paisley purse shop over here, whatever those things are called. So she goes over here, and I know what day it was. It was in August. It was the day before our anniversary. Guess where I had to go because nothing was bought yet? I went to the jewelry shop. So I go in the jewelry shop. The woman's checking somebody out, and she sits there, and she looks across the store, and she goes, how you doing, sir? And I said, I'm doing great. She goes, well, I have what you came in here for. So trying to blow off what happened in Gatlinburg, I said, well, I came in here for something for my wife. Tomorrow's our anniversary. And she goes, no, you didn't. And she walks up to me. She has this really weird necklace she drops kind of dangling out of her hand. And I said, well, what is that? And she says, in the book of Numbers, chapter 10, God called to Moses to make 2 trumpets out of hammered silver. And I finished it, and I said, to call people to the tabernacle because God just sat upon his throne on the Ark of the Covenant. And I said, I am not interested in that. She goes, I didn't ask you if you were interested. And she walked over, she puts it around my neck. She says, God bless you. Have a wonderful time in the Smoky Mountains, turned around and walked away. I went out of the shop and went to the Paisley purse shop and told my wife to get in the car. We're getting out of this town. So we left, we got home, everything was good. We decided we're going to take a group from our church to the Ken Ham's Creation Museum. Have you ever heard of that? Now they have Noah's Ark down the road from it, but which is incredible. But we took our group down there, and we were coming back, and somebody says, Jim, you're into this archaeological stuff so much. Why don't we do a study on the real sites that have been found in the Bible? Hey, folks, you got to watch what you watch on television. A lot of the stuff they show you on these documentaries is just junk. And so we started looking, and I started researching, and because I'm one for evidence. You got to show me evidence. You just can't say, well, here's where this happened, and just because somebody said it, I want to know what you have to know that happened there. So I started researching that, and I remembered one that I did watch, because then I also went back and researched it on the site of the true Mount Sinai. Not the St. Catherine site, but the one Paul said was it would be in Saudi Arabia. So this one is Jabal Allah's. It has every bit of the evidence. So I called History Channel to find out about that. Lo and behold, the guy on the documentary answers the phone. So he says, oh yeah, that was me. I'm on my way to film another documentary. I don't have time to talk with you. Give me your address. 3-minute conversation, hung up. He sent me the DVD. It was done. So 3 months later, I'm getting ready to do a message on the Ark of the Covenant. So I've kind of got everything together, what you know from the Bible and all these different things. And the week I'm getting ready to do that, my phone rings. Here is the guy from the documentary. He said, I can't get you off my mind. I think you're supposed to be on an expedition with me on the trail of the Ark of the Covenant. What is the deal with this? So I was like, okay, let me pray about it. So Sherry and I prayed about it, and 1 year later, lives changed. We'll take you on the journey. If you haven't seen it, this is how it all began. This is where our best-selling book came from. This is where everything started. And the other discoveries all came off of this. We started with what we're going to share with you in Ethiopia, because this is a country that's not looked at much of a Bible country, but it's mentioned over 50 times in the Bible. Maybe it's a Bible country. So we need to look at it as that. So it's a different world you go into in the far north. Let me explain something. I always forget this. The country of Ethiopia is a split country. The country that you see today is the biblical land. It used to be much bigger, but this is the biblical land, especially the north is the ancient kingdom of the Ethiopians you read about in the Bible. Okay? So from the capital city to the south, you can preach anything you want. That's where all the missionaries are. That's where all of this is. But you go in the north and try to do that, the biblical part, they'll run you out of town or they'll kill you. Isn't that ironic? The place where the Bible was, you can't preach the Bible. So that northern part, it's an incredible land. The people have a beautiful tone to them. They're wonderful, wonderful people. But it's like you drop back in time several thousands of years. The camel trains come in on Saturdays. It's just incredible when you start getting into it. And then when I come to this picture, it always kind of stops me and stuns me. The tree line in the back is the capital city, Addis Ababa. That is their city dump, which is bigger than most towns. It's huge. It's massive. And the people have nowhere to live. They have 10.5 million people living in this town, and they don't have anywhere to live, so the dump is smoldering and warm from the garbage, so they'll dig a hole, get a piece of tin, pull it over top of their head, and that's their house. That's where they live. These kids have pulled the tin out, and it's literally just leaning on each other, and you can drive down this street, and you'll see these kids wrapped up in a sheet thrown out by the side of the road to be picked up. That's kind of the world we work in. It's sad. It's a sad place. But then this is kind of what everybody wants to hear about. I can talk about the kids, I can talk about the people and know where to live, and they're dying, and people want to hear about other things. But the Ark of the Covenant brings us to where we need to be. The Ark of the Covenant is one of the very few things in the Bible God specifically designs it, tells you who's going to handle it, how it will be appearing, what it's going to be made out of, the dimensions, what's going to be in it, everything. Gave it extreme power. But people misunderstand it. It was given to Moses and Aaron to build, by the tribe of Dan built it. But the Ark of the Covenant, most people think this whole thing right here or that there is the Ark of the Covenant. That's not quite true. The Ark of the Covenant is from here, this part here, let me show you up here, from right here to the footholds on the floor, right here. It was made of acacia wood. It was made of acacia wood and wrapped in solid gold. The top of the ark, which is this here, was not really part of the ark. It was the covering, yes, but what it actually is was the throne of God, the mercy seat. The only place since the Garden of Eden God ever returned to this earth was upon that seat, a replica of his on earth as it is in heaven. So, this is the place. It was made of solid gold, which gives you the purity of it, but it was made of the acacia tree, which is this tree right here. There are some of them that are massive trunks in there, and those are huts. Yes, they still live in huts in the north. So that's what you're looking at there. But Aaron was the only one to go in, or the high priest. High priest would have bells in the bottom of his gown, a rope tied to his leg. He would go in supposedly completely cleansed. He had to be spiritually and physically cleansed before he walked in. If he wasn't, before he would ever uncover the Ark of the Covenant to even look at it. It never could be looked at by human eyes except on the Day of Atonement by the high priest. So before he would even uncover it, if he wasn't pure, God would strike him down dead. And I always think about this. How about if they pull you out with that rope and say, you're next. You go try. You know, it always kind of got me. But he would go in, assuming he was pure and clean, both spiritually and physically. He would go in, he would remove the covering. The chamber would be filled with frankincense smoke. He would dip into the blood of sacrifice. He would sprinkle it on the throne where God would sit. He would dip again and sprinkle it where the soles of God's feet shall rest. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is one of those things that considered, like I mentioned, it had massive power. The Holy Spirit within inside brought down the walls of Jericho, defeated armies by the tens of thousands, separated the river Jordan when it was flooded so they could pass through it. But all of a sudden, one day it disappeared. But the problem is man is the one dictating what happened, and they don't go one big ingredient that they forget to look at. Anybody want to take a guess what that is? The Bible. The Bible. One of the biggest ones, Nebuchadnezzar took it when he invaded the temple. Folks, if the Ark of the Covenant was taken, God's going to mention it. It mentions candlesticks, it mentions everything else, never mentions the throne. Don't you think they would mention that? The other famous one is Shishak. He took it. This is one of the biggest ones in the churches, by the way. Shishak took it, the Pharaoh out of Egypt. Again, in the Bible, it says they took all these different things, but it never mentions this being taken. You want to know why the church adopted that big one and said, it's Shishak, sure enough. You know why? Da-da-da-da, da-da-da. 1981, Indiana Jones in a movie said it, church took it, and it's been adopted ever since. No evidence whatsoever. So we took the biblical accounts, put it together, then did something that most people never do. We went there. When you go, you start to find something completely different. We started studying the Bible. We found out the time of Hezekiah in 2 Kings, we know that he went to he who dwells between the two cherubims on the Ark of the Covenant. His son comes into power, though, and here is where the story changes. Manasseh came in. He's an evil man. This guy came in and tried to sacrifice his son in the temple, brought pagan idols in. The Levitical tribe, who was the ones in order to take care of the throne of God, would have never allowed the presence of that in that environment. Thus, we started here, and we started looking for Manasseh. Then we went on to his son, Amon. Didn't do a whole lot. Then his son, Josiah, comes in, the boy king. Josiah comes in. He's trying to bring dignity back into Israel during this time period. And he actually sees the ark for the final time. And how do we know that? It's in the Bible. Here is the reference in the Bible in 2 Chronicles 35. The Levites are moving through. By the way, remember I said they marched it into battle a lot of times? Before them into battle and armies were defeated? Josiah cries out to the Levites because they're marching near Jerusalem but not through it. They're marching on to Babylonia. Now, what happens is Josiah cries out and says to the Levites, he's crying to the Levites, it says it, he says, don't let it be a burden upon your shoulders. 4 Levitical priests carry it on their shoulders. He says, don't let it be a burden upon your shoulders anymore. Bring back the Ark of the Covenant and serve your people Israel. Doesn't that tell you it's not in Israel anymore? I've had more people say, that doesn't prove that it's not in Israel. Come back and serve your people Israel? Okay, you believe what you want. we're taking the Bible. So we looked at that. Same chapter, next set of verses. Here's Pharaoh Necho and the army walking behind the Ark of the Covenant. They're on their way to battle the Babylonians, nothing to do with the Israelites. But Josiah confronts him. And the Pharaoh sends in messengers to Josiah, and here's what they say. Don't meddle with me, Josiah. I'm getting my commands from, and he says 2 times in one verse. I'm getting my commands from, in your Bible, it's capital G, God, Yahweh. God is the one leading me. Who has the Ark of the Covenant? It's the Egyptians. A Pharaoh out of Egypt has the Levitical tribe marching in front of him, and he's getting his commands from God. The only way that can happen, and the reference in the Bible specifically says it, you're getting the commands because the high priest has went in here, and he's gotten the commands from God upon the throne. So guess where we went? We didn't stay right in the Middle East. We went where the Bible says. We went to Egypt. So when you go to Egypt, we found out that there was a temple there. A temple on an island in the Nile River. You ever heard of that before? A temple in an island in the Nile River. The Nile River is, hey, it's pretty big, folks. And it flows northward, by the way, to the Mediterranean. So remember that right there. Flows northward to the Mediterranean. I'm really going to confuse you. You ready? If you say you're in Upper Egypt, you're in the south. Why? Source of the Nile's in the south. That's the upper area. So that's where it begins. So what we have here is in this particular place called Aswan. If you ever heard of Aswan, if you ever seen Death of the Nile, the movie, that's where they went. So there it is right there, Aswan. There's an island called Elephantine Island. This island is called Elephantine Island because it looks like giant elephants in the rocks coming up out of the water. Pretty cool. When I arrive there, they don't like me. I just tell you right now, point blank, they don't like me. Reason is, they want to take you to the right side of the island where all of the Egyptian temples are. They really get upset with me because I will not go there. I go to the other side of the island, the left side on the south part, and believe it or not, they have something there that they don't want you to see. On the island, they have a temple and a village, or not a village, it's a city. It was destroyed in 410 BC by the Egyptians. Why was it destroyed? Well, I'm going to show you right here. This has now been found by archaeologists to be a massive Hebrew-Israeli dwelling where they tell you we have no evidence of that whatsoever. And it was a Hebrew potter's village right here. Massive. Matter of fact, when you walk here today, you literally are crushing and breaking artifacts under your feet. They're everywhere. I mean, it makes me sick. You don't know how bad I could load up bags and bags of stuff here, but they get armed guards on me all the time. So I started looking down in here, and what they have found right here in the rubble, let me take you onto a head-on view. This is the exact dimensions of an ancient temple measuring the exact dimensions of Solomon's temple in Israel. You hear me? This Holy of Holies measures the exact dimensions of the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant sat in the Bible. Exact dimensions. And what they have found in the rubble, down in the perfectly preserved arid sand, for the last 75 years have been documents written by the guardians of the Ark of the Covenant, the Levites. And they're now in the Baltimore Museum, the museum in London, and the Munich Museum. And what these tell us is the entire history of what happened here. It says that they were holding sacrificial ceremonies to he who dwells between the two cherubims. The problem is they were sacrificing cows. If you know anything about Egypt, Hathor is a cow god or goddess. And so that didn't go over well with the new Pharaoh. So the Pharaoh ordered the destruction of the temple, which happened in 410 BC. So the Levitical tribe, they're crying out for help. They get help from 2 tribes, the tribes of Dan and Benjamin, from the source of the Nile River, the manuscripts say. We have every bit of evidence already written for us by them. It's sitting there. So it says they got from the source of the Nile River. The temple was destroyed by the Pharaoh. The 2 tribes came in and helped them escape. When they did, they took them to the source of the Nile River, upriver, which is down to the south. Okay? We're going now to the source. So they go down to the south. They escape from this. They take the throne with them. They ended up on a place called Tanakirkos in Lake Tana, Ethiopia. That lake is 100 miles north to south, 68 miles east to west. 6,000-pound hippos, 22-foot crocodiles, and perch in there up to 350 plus pounds. Great fishing, by the way. Feed your family and more in one trip. So, Tanakirkos is an incredible place, huge lake. Tanakirkos, though, is the holy island on that lake that you have to have permission to even step foot on. This is where it was written that they were taking the throne to. Guess what we did? We went. And the first time we docked onto this island, you couldn't even get off. They wouldn't allow you off. They have to then check you. They then gave you permission at that time to either get on or you get out. And that's it. That's the way it is. Like I said earlier, hey, if you want to find something, go where they're not charging the admission. Go where they don't want you. So here we are. We're in this place. It says they were holding sacrificial ceremonies to he who dwells there between the two cherubims. And they were doing it for a long period of time. This is the beginning of the Nile River right here. This is the dry season. That one little plume, it looks little, but those little ants right there are people. If you stand on that rock 50 yards away from that plume in the dry season, that'll blow you right off of that power of that waterfall. Right now it's the rainy season, and this is about a mile-long, massive waterfall. You can't even get close to it. So that's the beginning of the Nile River right there. It was said in 314 AD, the last Ethiopian Christian king, Ezana, came here, took the Ark of the Covenant to the kingdom of the Axumites, the kingdom of the Ethiopians, and it was brought to these places. Now, if you've ever seen this on TV, I'll tell you this is the place you've seen, but they don't give you half the story. They give you the Ethiopian false story. So with this story, this is the underground military bunker, which now serves as the treasury of the Ark. There's a hole in the ground beyond that, which is where the original church was located. This is the church they claim the Ark is in a back chamber, concrete chamber, and it's a labyrinth of walls to get back through this building to get to there. This is a new 3-story structure that all of this will be moved to there, and the Ark will be moved into the position. I was allowed to walk a plank up into the back to see this before they finished this building, and there is a concrete vault in the back left chamber, and they've got all these little walls that are about this high that they say they will lift it up over, and they turn real sharp. So what they'll do is once they get it done, they concrete the walls up so the Ark can never leave there except for the underground tunnel systems. So, with that known, back up, I got to show you this too. See the light green fence there? That is actually surrounding just these two buildings right here. So looking at it overhead, here are those two buildings, and that fence is about 8 foot tall, goes around these two buildings. You can get nowhere near that fence. You touch that fence, and they will take you out. I watched him take a German reporter and absolutely crush his legs to where from his knees down were facing upward like this. And they have armed guards around this place. This is nothing but a big dome built by Haile Selassie to honor Queen Elizabeth. And when she visited there in the 50s, ancient temple, that hillside, which goes all the way around the mountain, is the ancient empire that you read about in the Bible of the Ethiopians. Queen of Sheba's palace remains, Cush, the palace remains, everything, it's all around that mountain. Dump trucks are hauling stone all the time to be crushed. They'll literally drop into somebody's living room from 2,600 years ago. And I've been down in the chambers. It looks like their table settings are still sitting there. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, the area here, again, off limits. You're not allowed anywhere near it. Only men can cross into this section. Women can't go any farther than this. There's the military bunker with the treasury located right there. So, in 2013, 2 years after we made what you're going to find, the discovery I'll share with you today, I returned back to this place, got to my motel room, just hadn't even got my backpack off my back. I opened the door, and here's this frantic young man. He says, "The guardian of the Ark has summoned you to the church of the Ark. You must come quickly." Let me explain the guardian to you. The guardian's a man who gives up his entire life to guard inside that little fence. He never, ever can leave there. Never has access to the outside world. Nothing to do with the outside world. What happens is they have a Levitical tribe believed to be on the outskirts of the city. And this guy when a guardian dies, a new guardian will come in and take over, but they'll line the little boys outside the fence. That man will stand and pray. He will point to one of those boys. The family will push the child through the gate. He will pull the gate shut. That child will never walk out of there alive again. He will be raised by the guardian to be the guardian. And when the guardian dies, the boy now steps into power, and he does the same exact thing. So, understanding that, you don't get audience with this guy. And all these documentary guys go in there and say, oh, yeah, well, I can meet with... You don't meet with him. It's just the way it is. But all of a sudden, they're telling me to get to the church. So I show up, I go down in the back, and we get down in that section, and oh boy, here we go. Things started to change. But I'm going to back up before I finish this 2 years to 2011, basically. We first arrived here at this site, and they took us down in the treasury of the Ark of the Covenant, took our team in. And we got in, they frisked us, they took everything from us. We walk in, covered gold. Oh my gosh, gold everywhere in this building, in the treasury of the Ark of the Covenant. So we walk in, and they wanted to show our team the covering that the ark was covered in when King Azana came and took it from the island. And we now have them not touching that because it disintegrates when they touch it. It's just literally falling apart. It's centuries old. So my wife and everybody went to the back, and I couldn't get past the first shelf. The first shelf was covered in the solid gold diamond encrusted crowns of the great kings of Ethiopia. And I just couldn't pass the gold. I was like stunned. All of a sudden, I seen a poof in the shelf. It was all, at that time, we got it better now, but at that time, it was all dusty. And so what happened is I realized I have no feeling in my upper body. I'm literally standing there like this, shaking, and didn't realize that I was engulfed in the gold. And the poof was my sweat dripping onto the shelf. And I said it, I was standing there like this, and I was like, oh no. And I was afraid I was having a heart attack. And I went, and I swayed backwards, and hey, you want to get a guard, an armed guard to you real quick? Grab the diamond encrusted gold crown shelf. I fell into it. Bounced off of it, twisted, went backwards, and was on my knees facing the opposite direction. And I was facing two things. Two things immediately identified. I knew what I was looking at because, well, by that time the guard was on me, the curator was on me, my guide was on me, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "What am I looking at?" And the curator said, in the book of Numbers, chapter 10, God called to Moses to make 2 trumpets out of hammered silver. These are the 2 trumpets that King David blew. These are the 2 trumpets we will blow when we return the throne. I had the necklace on from the woman 1 year earlier who put the trumpet necklace around my neck. I sat there and cried, and my wife came up, and she's crying. 2 5.5-foot long silver trumpets. This isn't as long, but they're very similar to this shape, and they have 12 bands around them, the 12 tribes of Israel. Very, very ancient. These are the 2 trumpets that will be blown when the ark returns, or the throne returns to Jesus in Jerusalem. Now, with that said, here we are 2 years later. I'm now standing, being frisked again. They're taking everything from me. They're walking me in. They unlock the gate to the church of the ark. And I walk through, and here comes the guardian of the Ark of the Covenant. Here's his curator. Here's the young man that brought me. He said to me, "God told me you were coming." He says, "Now you go back and you tell everyone we are making preparations of a return of the throne to Jerusalem." He says, "I must die before this happens because I cannot make the journey." He said, "And when this happens, you will know. Go tell the world it's begun." Look what's happening right now as we sit here today. So, just to let you know, the guardian can't be filmed close up, but he had a picture taken of him in his full royal gown with all the gold on him. And he went in, and I'm going to quickly, I get 15 minutes to tell you, so I'm going to tell you. I don't tell people this a lot of times, but I want to tell you about it. He went, called in 3 guys. He called in this guy, the young guardian, and another person who sat down on 3 stools right over here. He had the royal picture in his gown taken, told this guy to go make a copy of it. He then walks over And he tells them, he sits down on the stools. He starts giving them instructions about how the return will take place, who will do it, how the procession will be, how they're going to guard it, how they have to pray in front of it. Do you understand? They're confused. He says, I have to go. Do you understand what I'm telling you? And he says, yes. They're saying, yes, I understand. He says, you take the picture of me and make sure Mr. Jim has it. And he looks up in the sky, yells up in the sky, nods his head, goes over, says, do you understand what I've said to you? And they said, yes. He sits down on the stool and he says, it's time for me to go. Boom. Falls over dead. The young boy steps in as the new guardian. That's all happened here. It's crazy. And I have an audience with him too. I just don't understand it. But the Ethiopians, folks, are the ones chosen to return the throne, if we believe our Bible. And the head rabbi at the Temple Mount also confirmed this. They have everything else in place. Isaiah 18 says this, woe to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of what country? The wings it's talking about, this is the Hebrew translation is covered in wings. It's talking about eagles, the bird of the Bible. God mentions it. You go to Ethiopia, I can take you up to a mountain and eagles, they're swarming the skies. They'll take food right out of your hands. And it says, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia that sendeth ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of bulrushes upon the waters. Isaiah is a prophet. He's talking about the future. You go to Lake Tana today, it's the only place you will still find them using pure bulrush papyrus boats anywhere in Africa. It's right here on this lake. It says, go ye swift messengers to a nation scattered and peeled, tall and smooth skinned, a people terrible from the beginning hitherto. Do you know what that means? Rabbi at the Temple Mount told me what it means. He said in Hebrew, that means people who knew sin from its very origin. How many of you were with me in the first service? Does that now confirm what you just said, what we just learned? Who knew sin from its very origin. A nation meted out and trodden down, whose lands and rivers have spoiled. What do you know about Ethiopia? What do you first thing you think of? Starvation, disease. That's describing it right there. Who would ever think that anything important would be there? You see what I'm saying? What a great place to hide everything. So then it goes on, and Isaiah says, all ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, when he lifts up a sign in the mountains. That's the northern region of Ethiopia. And when he bloweth a what? That doesn't translate as a shofar. That translates as a physical trumpet. It says, hear ye, in that time shall the present. Oh boy. The word present here in Hebrew is the word that describes the exalted gift will be brought unto the Lord of hosts, which is who? Jesus, the coming Messiah, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, the Mount Zion. Folks, that's the throne room. What's the only thing that was ever in the throne room of God? The throne of God. It's saying Ethiopia, and I've had people say, well, that's only one scripture. Well, how many do you need? The Bible, I can just sit here all day and start giving you some. Here's Zephaniah, another prophet. He says, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, there we go again, my suppliants, my servants, even the daughters of my dispersed, the Jews shall bring mine offering. Offering is an exalted gift, the same word used in Isaiah. Bring is the word yabal, which means it's be done in a pomp and circumstance event. How did King David move the Ark of the Covenant? Trumpets, drums, he danced naked through the streets as they brought him down. It was a pomp and circumstance celebrated event. And boy, it sounds like it's coming. So with that said, with the Ethiopians, they traveled the Nile River, took the ark back. Here's the papyrus boat right here. This is taken a couple years ago at sunrise. They fish in these bulrush boats, still as they have for centuries. They're still doing it today on that lake. This is the island of Tanakirkos. Right here is the island. It's got a split right here. This is the servants' island. There's a waterway there. This is the holy island. You have to have permission to go on. It's up over the top of this, 68 foot up over the wall is the island. There's a lot of lushness up there. If you know anything about coffee, you like coffee, the island where coffee in Ethiopia, you know that's where it came from, is right over here to the left, back over here. There's coffee trees growing here. So we crashed into the rocks. They gave us permission to climb the 68-foot tall cliff. We get to the top. The women have to stay right there. They're not allowed to go any further. They're an Old Testament belief, and they had to stay there. We were taken onto this island, and the men got to go to the left, and it was almost a mile through the jungle. That island is it's long. It's really long and narrow. So we walked that island, and as we're coming up through there, we know the story that 15 years prior to us, there was a man that came there and was allowed to go through it and look. And what they allowed him to do is go into the treasury, and they started showing him some things. They showed him this right here. This is a meat fork used for the burnt offering sacrifice of the Lord for the preparation of the Ark of the Covenant. That is Moses' brother Aaron's almond bud symbol at the top. This here, this is an ephod harness. They say the stones of the 12 tribes of Israel on the ephod were huge stones. It was very heavy, and the ephod would hook onto this harness to keep it in place so he could stand up straight when he went in, the high priest. This right here is the meat hooks. The meat hooks is what they hooked the burnt offering sacrifice on as soon as it was slaughtered in order to drip the blood into the blood bowl for the sacrifice. These items have now been metal dated by a scientist, and they are of the time of the Ark of the Covenant coming here to this island. This right here, they also said, well, if there's an Ark of the Covenant was here, there had to be a Holy of Holies, but they had to be pole holes in the rock somehow carved. So they dug around, found this pole hole where they claimed the Ark had sat. This pole hole is about this deep, comes to a V shape, measured off the dimensions of the Ark of the Holy of Holies, found a second one, measured across from those two. Guess what they found? Nothing. There was an earthquake. The whole side of the cliff fell off into the water 68 feet below. They found the other two pole holes, cut them off, and lifted them to the top. There's the blood bowl for the dipping of the blood sacrifice right there. Everything's setting here. Of course, Jesus had already come in 314 AD. They didn't need these items anymore for sacrifice, so they only took the throne of God with them. So I arrive here. We're walking through this jungle 3 days after the issue with the trumpets. So we're coming in. We're walking through. A retired engineer from San Francisco was walking along with me, and he walks up and he goes, "Jim, you okay?" And I said, "I don't feel very well, Dave." He said, "Well, you look horrible." So he grabs onto my arm. I felt like my chest was just coming out. It was horrible. And I staggered, and Dave's got a hold of my arm. We come to a rock archway. We come to the archway, and he reaches and grabs me, and I fall up against the archway. And we're like, okay, they're moving on. They took the rest of our team up, and they were showing them the platform the ark was setting on. So I'm sitting there, and I go to I start to take a step through, and they grab me by my collar and rip me back through. And they said, no. You must remove your shoes. You're about ready to walk on holy ground. So being oblivious to what's going on, I kick off my shoes. Dave helps me. We go about 75 more yards. Here they're telling about, here's the platform where the ark is. Over here's the pole hole here, pole hole there. The other two were here. They're now in the building. And it was all covered in grass. They haven't cleaned anything or checked it in over 2,000 years almost. So what they have here is a platform with grass on rock. And what's Jim do? I face planted. And they thought I had now just defiled the platform of the Ark of the Covenant. They were fuming. Well, what happened is when they pulled me up to my knees, the whole group of men sitting there witnessed this, pulled me up to my knees. I jerked and started reaching out and started grabbing the grass and just ripping it up, and it was coming up in huge chunks because it's grass on rock. So I grabbed up, and the grass was ripping off, and I started throwing off the side, and they're going, "What is he doing? What is he doing?" They were fuming. Well, I threw it all off the side and started just getting the dirt off like this, and when I did, they all fell to their knees. I collapsed here and fell forward here. This is the platform where they claim the ark was. Pole hole. The other two were here. They're now in this building. This was all covered in grass and leaves and dirt. And when I fell forward, I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 engravings into the ground. They just happened to be known what is called foothold engravings. They held something into place right there on a rock cliff. And by the way, on the platform where they claim the Ark of the Covenant sat here, those 7 engravings match the exact dimensions of the biblical Ark of the Covenant. It's the only known physical evidence, other than the Bible, of its existence right here. Yeah, I said the same thing. And by the way, I go back all the time and I say, wow, and I go back for some reason and keep measuring it, thinking it's going to change because it's hard to believe. And I wrote a book about it, became bestseller, involved with it because of the evidence that it's there or that it had been there. But these footholds held it into place on this platform, measures the exact dimensions, and it's still the only evidence ever found of its existence today. We now, as of this year or last year, I've covered this platform. Now that it's open to the weather, we want to protect it. So I've got this covered. We brought a company in and covered with an awning over top. They won't let it be covered on the sides. It has to be open air. So it's just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So I won't go into the rest of this and share with you because we're about out of time, but we've got 4 minutes, and I would love to take some questions if you have any questions on this. It would be that you'd be in the back. So go ahead. Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, if we'd read the Bible a little closely, and this is becoming a big issue, what you're talking about. He's talking about the Dome of the Rock with the Muslims and all that's located on the Temple Mount right now and all of that. The Bible states that it's in the city of David is where the temple was. The city of David, Elon Sharom has now located that with the seals and everything on the outside wall of Jerusalem. So you can actually go and they will show you the evidence, and the seal is marking the city of David from Bethlehem. We know, so they've got the site. So, but it's going to be Muslims, it's going to be Jews, and there's going to be a lot of other people arguing about this, and they're already doing it. Trust me. But that's the issue right now. So only time's going to tell where they're going to do this, but they say they've got it ready to go. So, yes. Mm-hmm. In 314 AD, King Azana came and took it from that platform and took it to the site where those churches are that I had in that picture. Now, if you'd ask me if I think it's in that town right now because of the war that's going on, I would say probably not. They have a massive underground tunnel system, and it's gone places and disappeared for centuries, or not centuries, for decades when the war was going on before. So I would say it's either on its way or it's somewhere else being moved. Yes. Mm-hmm. We've had discussions about it before. You don't ask him a lot of questions because you're not given that opportunity. You're to be quiet and listen to him. But we had a discussion involving Jesus, and Mary never came up in the discussion, which was a good thing, especially with the Ethiopian Orthodox being who they are, and don't even get me started on them because they're not who they say they are. So with that said, I can't ask him directly, but he has a relationship that is beyond anything I've ever seen. There's a knowledge there that I can't even touch. So, but we are the only group in that particular northern region that is working directly with the tribes of Dan and Benjamin, when we're smuggling the Word of God into them. We're going to be talking about that in the next service. And enough said. So that's what our whole work and our mission is. We use the other part as the front, and then they attack us for it. So. I've had people tell me, God dropped you there. A lot of people have been given that opportunity. The guy 15 years prior to me. But it's like Dave, the guy from San Francisco. He said, I watched your face. He said it was like you went flush and God took you and put you where he wanted you. And I don't know. I never understood. I still don't. But whatever it is changed me that day. I know things now I never knew before. It had to been. After that, I've never had another experience quite like it. Whew. It's hard for me to talk about it because it changed everything. Everything. Yes?
So when the guard dies and the new one takes over, when they get the little boys, I mean, do they teach them?
Yeah, they have a caretaker for the guardian. She's talking about when the guardian dies. But it seems like evidently they're already about 19 or 20 by the time.
Okay, so they're not.
Obviously, they direct when it's time to go, or God does, because he knew. He knew the day, he knew the hour, he knew the minute. And he just was gone. And by the way, they sent me that picture, called me in the middle of the night because they start 8 hours prior to us, called me in the middle of the night, said the guardian is dead. He's requested that you have this picture of him. We just put it on Facebook, thought he wanted, we said condolences to the people of the world and the people of Ethiopia on the death of the guardian. No one knew about it. And it just exploded on us. And he had requested specifically that we had that for that day. So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously it was a foretelling about what was coming. I mean, God used that, and he used that painting. I've tried to figure this whole thing out and how this happened. I can't explain it to you because it has not stopped. It's been a roller coaster ride where we go in exploring and use that as the front to reach the persecuted tribes of the Jews where they're being killed left and right. And Israel wants them back now, so we're trying to get Christ to them before they go. So I believe some of it was, yes, to prepare me for that, to prepare us for this, but then also get